Hello, comrades. Commissar Bro here today after quite a hiatus, at least like 2 or 3 months. I know, I'm just completely slacking on you guys. It's been terrible. Here today, though, with Field of Glory 2, one of the more recent releases from Slytherin. Actually developed by Byzantine Games, published by Slytherin, of course. This game actually centers around ancient warfare between, the Romans, the Carthaginians, the Greeks, various barbarian tribes at the time, with a very extensive list of units to choose from and an extensive list of armies, no less. Basically, you've got a set of campaigns you can choose from. You can adjust the difficulties. The campaigns aren't really set pieces that are linear. They're kind of more of basically a number of battles and whatnot that you can adjust from. There are set piece battles, but I find so far the ones I've played that have been the most fun is, for example, like the Rise of Rome campaign, where I can sit here and customize and just kind of do what I want to do, whether it's customizing the units that I have, the era of the armies that I'm using, because like one of the cool things is you can actually pick a more modern Rome versus a more ancient, like the ancient Italian hill tribes or something like that. So basically there'll be like 300 to 400 years of difference in military technology or something like that. So it's just interesting how that is. And I guess it's going to be focused more on organization, military organization, as opposed to actual technology in that respect. But either which way, I'm definitely not the historian. I'm more of the gamer. So with that said, Field of Glory, you sit here and you build an army based on a point value. It's very similar to Sengoku Jidai or Pike and Shot, if you're fans of those games. It kind of expands upon those what's the gameplay mechanics that are introduced in that game. And in my opinion, I actually think it does it better. Now, again, it's still a different type of game, but just the actual way the battles play out themselves is a lot more interesting to me than Sengoku Jidai or even Pike and Shot. And don't get me wrong, I really liked Sengoku Jidai. I liked it a lot, actually. I remember putting in like 30, 40 hours in that game. And I know that may not be a lot for most war gamers, but for me, that's a lot of time to put into one singular game. But anyway, so a little bit more about the game. Basically, the battles are, it's really simply how they pan out. Again, you first start out by putting, your units, deploying them kind of like a deployment stage. Again, if you've played Sanctus Reach or if you've played any of the Slytherin war games, you're going to be familiar with how this works. There's different bonuses you get from terrain or different consequences. You don't want to have your troops on rough ground. Moving them through forests, for example, are going to disorganize your troops. So you want to try to stick to the open where you can. You want to be careful about attacking enemy units in the forest as well. There could be major consequences for you doing so. Or attacking units on rough ground. If they pretty much get the opportunity to kind of entrench and then you try to attack them, it might not turn out well for you. But at the same point, being on that rough ground may not exactly be a good idea for you to attack someone else. It could end up being the death of your entire unit that you're using in that respect. One of the things I actually really like, I like the archers and the slingers. They and the in this case the velites and Cretan archers, etc., etc. Like, I really like them in this game. I find that they tend to be very effective, and you can also kind of retreat through your lines, and you can do all sorts of crazy stuff like that, wherein they're actually skirmishers. Now, if you play a game like Total War or whatnot, they'll literally, you'll watch them go through the line, and there's really no major drawbacks of doing so. So I actually feel like this game does a better job of illustrating the disorganization that can come through a whole unit marching right through your lines in the middle of combat. And that's just something you'll notice. It's not really shown as much as it causes like a combat debuff or something, but your skirmishers, if they retreat through the line, they're not able to shoot. That's something else. Every unit has action points. So with those action points, you're going to see a limitation of what you can entirely do. For example, here, I'm sitting here trying to get my troops to face the way I want them to face, and I just totally mess it up. Again, with the limited amount of action points, that can be kind of an issue if you are not careful. One of the things I actually really do like about this game as well is I like being able to use my army as a single unit. You can actually separate your skirmishers and the land units and the cavalry all into single things and kind of move them as a group, making it a lot simpler. I don't remember Sengoku Jidai having features like that, or Pike and Shot. You would actually have to move each unit one by one. So that was a neat little feature in here as well. But here, finally, we're actually going to start to see some combat, as I've spent the majority of the time thus far just trying to set my units up. By the way, I apologize if I sound particularly nasally. The winter never tends to be my friend, despite it being my favorite time of year. So it's all the sniffles and snuffles and all that crap that comes along with it. Glorious, as it were. Glorious indeed. So the Roman army is moving up. I don't actually remember when I recorded this battle who I was fighting. The funny thing is I actually recorded this footage quite a while ago. This is not recent footage of the most recent game. Matter of fact, the footage was recorded before the most recent expansion just came out, which, if I'm not mistaken, is Fires of Persia or something like that. I might have to look that up just to be entirely sure of what it was. Let's see. Yeah, Immortal Fire. That's what it was. Which adds, from my understanding, yeah, it adds 8 new factions, particularly the Persians, the Spartans, the Latins, Antigonos, Etruscans, and so on. I was actually kind of surprised this game didn't have the Etruscans to begin with the focus on the formation of Rome and the rise of Rome and so on. I figured the Etruscans would have been one of the first ones that they added in. The Etruscans that you see here, though, are only 490 to 280 BC, 2 different armies you can actually choose from. Also adds a bit more Macedonian armies, like under Philip and Alexander. Alexander in the first phase of the Wars of the Diadochi. 10 new epic battles, 24 new quick battles. It expands a lot. I mean, the game itself is already really fun. If you're a fan of war games, you're going to find something in this game that you enjoy. It does a really good job of kind of keeping the set-piece board game aesthetic, if you know what I mean. Or if you've played any of the past Field of Glory games, then you're going to be familiar with how this plays out. Or even, what were those games that came out by Slytherin a long time ago, like Legion and Spartan? I used to love those games. Those are great. I would love to see more like that, actually, as a matter of fact, because Legion and Spartan was more of a 4X type game, but you could still play battles, sort of like Total War, but they kind of went their own way with it. And in my opinion, I actually found them to be simpler games. Whereas Total War has gone some interesting routes as of late. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Total War and whatnot, but there's no doubt in my mind that there's definitely differences in design, maybe even overcomplication in some areas. Whereas I feel like a game like this, or again, Spartan or Legion, kept it simple, which ultimately I think is a good thing, especially for a war game. A war game is already incredibly complicated. All the variables that are going in, the tactics that are being used, the unit types, and so on, making the actual experience itself difficult is not exactly something you want to do. In my opinion, you want to try to keep it as simple as possible, thus more people can understand what they're doing and keep the variables as a passive. So essentially, I think this game does that incredibly well. You can basically go in having no experience of how a war game works, but this game is straightforward and you can pick it up really fast. Now, if you're going to be successful is a whole nother issue and topic in itself, because truly knowing the variables, knowing the right terrain, knowing where to stand your troops and fight your troops. For example, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to actually maintain control of the hill. You can kind of see where the skirmishers are standing, where the hill is. So yeah, but anyway, that's a whole nother topic of discussion. So simplicity is a good thing, and ultimately that's what I recommend even in the most complicated of war games and strategy games, is having good simplicity. Now, still having depth is great, but again, keep the mechanics themselves simple, in my opinion. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about the battle. So as you can see, I'm already kind of off to a rough start here. This is definitely not good ground for me. My units are kind of awkwardly angled. The enemy army is trying to move in as quickly as possible. And they're closing the gap pretty quickly. But as you can see, most of their troops tend to be spearmen, phalanxes, so on and so forth. I actually think I'm fighting the Carthaginians, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I am. It literally says at the top left. Look at this. I'm retarded. But anyway, so they tend to have like Sacred Band and, Libyan spearmen and so on and so forth. Spearmen from Africa, essentially, is what the majority of their army is consisting of. They do have skirmishers that are kind of engaging at the bottom of the hill, as you can see where my Triarii are there in the middle, and the Hastati and my actual Velites themselves are meeting the enemy skirmishers head on. I'm actually trying to do a little bit of skirmishing myself with the Cretan archers. Unfortunately, what comes in to the game, though, you got to be careful with your archers. If you put a military or a melee unit in front of them, they're no longer able to fire at enemies on the other side. I understand that, but that is kind of a caveat that I'm not a big fan of, I suppose. It makes sense. It makes more sense, in my opinion, for Velites, units like that. But my assumption would be archers can shoot over the heads of their allies. But again, I'm not a military historian, as it were, so maybe I'm oversimplifying what was really going on. With that said, as you can see here, I try to engage the enemy swordsmen here on the side with my elephants. One of my favorite things about this game, especially once you kind of see melee combat starting to occur, is you'll see the little dance that everybody does. It's a simplistic little animation, but I absolutely love it. Them just kind of moving back and forth as they engage each other. You're especially going to see it when the phalanxes and the spearmen and whatnot start to engage with my my actual Hastati and Principes and so on. So I absolutely adore it. It's great. But watching the battles, especially one of the most interesting things you'll see is it starts out, everything is in nice, orderly, beautiful lines. But as the battles carry on and drag on, they start to turn into chaotic messes where it doesn't seem to be a steady front line. The line is malleable, as it were. It's flexible. It's all over the place. Even right now, you can still kind of see some semblance of, my line compared to the enemy line. But ultimately, as this battle drags on, as units retreat, as other units push forward, and so on, you're going to see an ebb and flow on the battlefield. You're going to see troops get outflanked, like what even happened to my dudes right there. They just got outflanked because they engaged the skirmishers, and now they're completely surrounded. Now, that's not really good, and as a matter of fact, they're probably all going to get wiped out. I don't remember. So this battle is basically as new to me as it is to you. And the glaring mistakes I'm already making are very, very painful to watch, no doubt in my mind. One of the big things you'll also see is the enemy army is significantly larger than my own. Unit-wise, my units tend to be more elite. The numbers are much lower. However, quality-wise, they're just better quality. They're better trained soldiers, as per, the Roman legionaries were. But again, this was Republic Rome and not the actual Empire Rome. And these units are prior to the Gaius Marius reform. So, but still, they're Romans, man. They're pretty elite fighting force as far as it goes in the ancient world. So, as far as it goes, I feel pretty confident in my odds here. I actually don't even remember if I win this battle. I'm pretty sure I do, but, I mean, it doesn't look too good starting right out. Now, we are getting a lot of hits off with the skirmishers, which is a good way to start. We're doing a pretty good number of casualties here and there. That's something else with this game. If you haven't played it yet, each unit has a strength factor, strength representing the number of men in the unit itself. For example, these Hastati, these veteran Hastati and Principes I have here, are made up of 470 men. They just lost 10, so they have 460 left. Now, units don't fight to the death. It's realistic. It was rare in ancient times for battles to be total bloodbaths to where there was literally no one left. As a matter of fact, some of the battles in the Civil War were considered some of the bloodiest to ever occur, based on the fact that armies were losing over 10% of their men, which was considered a massacre as far as it goes. Now, again, there were battles like Cannae and whatnot, which can really, change that whole perspective of things, where it was an absolute bloodbath, and there's no better way to put it. But for the most part, units are going to retreat as they start to suffer a couple of losses here and there. So if a unit drops down to about half strength, they're going to book it. And frankly, I don't blame them. If you saw half of your friends go down, injured, or die, I imagine you're not going to be too inclined to stand your ground at that point in time, because then it becomes that whole flight mechanism. Now, you will see from time to time units literally stay and fight till what could be the last man. And actually, that's something I think we'll get to see in this battle here, where a unit literally stays for far longer than than any reason dictates it should, which can be super aggravating depending on who you're talking to. Ooh, that was a nasty charge. They got pushed back very well. And again, that's one of the main reasons I'm trying to maintain this hill ground. You can kind of see where it's denoted by my unit's line. That really shows that we have the high ground. Early on, the enemy units are engaging. Only one of our units has done particularly bad. For the most part, everyone else is holding strong, especially our elephants. However, one of our units has broken already, so 10% of our forces are already running off the field. That's a pretty big number. It was that single unit, I think, of barbarians or auxilia units that completely just decided to retreat and get the hell out of Dodge, which frankly I don't blame them, but still. Let's see, and yeah, we're still only at 10%. Ooh, we took heavy casualties on that one, 39 men. But our elephants are still chugging along doing damage. Those Romans right there doing a little dance, making a little love, and fighting those spearmen. That's right. It's not looking too bad. You have odds and values you can actually sit there and look at whenever you're considering an attack. Ooh, that was a nasty one right there. Our general actually pushed forth and did some serious damage on the enemy. Ooh, we did another. Just took out 100 men between the two. Now, you got to be careful, though. Sometimes your units will charge forward, and they'll expose their rear, which is a problem that literally just happened right there. Now, I will tell you what I've noticed. Although Triarii are supposed to be the elite of the Roman army during this time, between Triarii and Equitae, etc., they're supposed to be kind of like the tough guys. They've been around the block. They've been here for a long time. However, I noticed because of their lower unit values, Triarii tend to not be as effective as like Hastati and Principes, or even the veteran Hastati and Principes. They seem to just be far more effective. It could be the fact that they're using swords rather than spears, but at the same point in time, I can't help but feel like in my time playing the game that Triarii should have been a little bit more effective. But again, maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe there's values I'm missing. Maybe it's bad ground that I put my guys on, which is entirely possible. Again, I'm far from a master strategist, as it were, and that was so depressing. My dudes just go in, they throw their pilums, or their pila and their javelins, and just completely dodged. Depression sets in. Oh, no. Our skirmishers are still sitting in the back line here. I'm not really sure what I was trying to do with them. I feel like they retreated. I pulled them back behind the line, but then I had nowhere to put them. Now, one thing you got to keep in mind as well is skirmishers are not allowed to engage in combat with, like, melee units. Now, melee units can attack them and lock them into combat, but they can't actually do so themselves. And as we sit here, our units are moderately disordered, running on this rough ground. Honestly, I should have completely given that ground up. I don't know why I put so much effort and time into trying to get those units over there to the far right. That seemed like a waste. As a matter of fact, didn't seem like a good idea at all. One other thing I find really hard to be effective in this game is cavalry. Again, it's probably just the way I'm using them, but it seems to be very difficult to effectively... Ooh, that hurt a lot. That was 44 men just lost in that fight. But yeah, I have trouble using them effectively. Now, there's times where a charge can be absolutely devastating from cavalry, but there's other times where it can completely fail as well. So... that's one of the ones you got to make sure when you're in battle, when you're engaging, you want to be careful not to do any crazy stunts with your cavalry. Don't let them get too far out. Skirmisher cavalry tend to be very effective as well. I highly recommend in your battles using skirmisher cavalry because there's times in there where they're going to be incredibly useful, especially when engaging other cavalry. Oh, and let's see if that's going to work. Charge. Pila, our throne. It was relatively even. And unfortunately, our horses can't seem to get a good hit on these guys, so I decide not to do it, and I decide just to turn them instead. They are charging uphill, so it's especially not going to be very useful for them, but it looks like I didn't really have much of a choice. Doing a flank attack on these guys was a good move. It fragmented the enemy forces. Whatever you can, that's what you want to try to do. Just like classical, strategy as far as it goes, a pincer movement, a hammer and anvil, etc., is the best way to go about most military actions. If you can, just surrounding enemy troops is going to demoralize them, is going to make them not as inclined to fight. They're going to think they're surrounded, and they're going to try to break and run because they think there's no chance to survive, which they're probably right. So that's something I do highly recommend as often as possible in this game, just like any game, even Total War, is to attack from the rear when you can. It's going to be a little bit more successful for you overall if you do so. And we're engaging the skirmishers in the center, trying to do a little bit of damage, not really getting a lot of big hits off of it. Our veteran Hastati with the general going in. Ooh, 51 kills. That is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Taking out as many men as we possibly can. Moving those Triarii up. Again, I think trying to find a good place to put those Triarii is clearly one of my struggles right now. Excuse me as I cough up a storm. I actually kind of want to try to survive the rest of this battle. It's a whole 32-minute long battle, so we got another 11 minutes to go. But as you can see, what I was referring to in the past as well, like with the battle lines, like, look, the battle line has created almost kind of like it has stayed steady on the far right side for the most part. I mean, we've kind of pushed a little bit around and kind of expanded it as it goes. But if you look on the left side of the line, it is slowly pushing inward on the Carthaginian forces. However, there's like a little salient, is that the word I'm looking for? Like a satellite on the outside of Carthaginian troops holding on the side. Now, a bunch of the Carthaginian troops are retreating at this point in time, 12% in total. But still, it's anybody's battle as far as it goes. All it would take is a couple of parts for my units to be kind of break or not do so well in combat, like what happened. Ooh, that was nasty. And I'll be running, essentially. There we go. We're winning a lot of engagements, right? Oh, as we literally lose one. Our units are disrupted right there. That's not... Oh, they got fragmented. Disrupted and fragmented in the same turn. That is no bueno at all. But, thankfully, our forces fight ever onward for the Emperor. They will not... Well, not really. For the Republic! There we go. That's a much more appropriate way of putting it. That's right. All right, so we lost. They lost 34. We lost 10 more, and our Triarii are going in, not doing much. Yeah, see, I can't ever seem to get it right with the Triarii. I don't know why. Again, maybe I'm just using them incorrectly. I know that the Triarii were supposed to, and again, if I could be wrong, but if I remember correctly, the way a Roman battle line would be set up is you would have like the Velites and the skirmishers in the front, and then you would have like the Hastati in the second front. The Hastati would be like their younger recruits who have enough money to purchase a sword and a shield, maybe a little bit of armor and a helmet. And then you would have the Principes, who are a bit more veteran guys. They've been around. They've seen a couple of battles. They've gotten a little bit of pay, so they're able to afford actual armor, ringmail, and so on. I think it was ringmail that they would be wearing. Like, cause I know the newer armor would be like the Lareca Segmentata and so on. But anyway, and then you would have the Triarii in the rear. The Triarii being like the veteran infantry. These guys have seen combat plenty of times. They have been around, and they fought in a little bit more of a classical Greek style, with basically having like a long spear and a shield, rather than, the Hastati and the Principes who would fight with, gladiuses, short swords, in order to engage in close combat to be particularly effective in close combat. So, from my understanding, you basically would only want to use Triarii, like, in the last-ditch effort of the battle or whatever. But, yeah, no. Like, that's not how I use them here. I'm, like, trying to actually push flanks and whatnot with them, going to the far right, engaging cavalry, and completely getting smashed in the melee for them. Oh, no, our center broke. And that's something that was also damning. The center breaking, that's a terrible thing that could occur. Yeah, and it being veteran Hastati and Principes, no less, engaging the enemy general unit and failing to actually hold them back. So basically now our skirmishers are all exposed. However, we're pushing really hard on the left flank with the elephants even coming around from the rear, but getting disrupted. So I don't know how much longer they're going to last either. Again, you know, this is what I need to start doing, is just recording stuff, completely forgetting about how the battle went, and then going back to narrate over it, because this is exciting to me. I don't remember if I win this battle because it looks really bleak. It's neck and neck. We have 16% of our troops have retreated, 17% of the Carthaginians have retreated. As far as it goes, it's still anybody's battle, and our Triarii are getting absolutely slaughtered on the rocky hills over there to the far right. However, we're starting to push back some Carthaginians, and we're starting to do some more damage, trying to break their morale. Ooh, 40 men just got taken out in engagement. Cavalry holding on the far left. Infantry engaging on the far right, doing more damage, fragmenting the enemy forces and pushing them back. How are we doing in the center? We're holding. Well, I guess that's important, right? Is the fact that we continue to hold. The elephants charging from the flanks, disrupting them. Yes, and then more Hastati come in for the charge on the African spearmen. Glorious, glorious victory. Oh, there we go. An additional 23. I was about to say, they're hurting. You know they're hurting. And our skirmishers are still doing some damage to the enemy skirmisher cav as well. I absolutely love Velites, might I mention. Absolutely love them. I don't know, guys. I think this battle might be going in our favor. It still could go either way. All it would take really is 2 of our units, I think, to break, and we'd be done for. Because, like, look at this unit over here. There's Hastati Principes and these Velites that are engaging where the enemy general has broken through the center. All that enemy general has to do is turn and engage that the Hastati and Principes that are there, and we'll be in trouble. Like, we'll be in a lot of trouble. Our skirmishers desperately trying to turn and engage the enemy units and try to put some casualties on them before they do the inevitable and turn around and charge. Ooh, there we go. A beautiful charge by more of our Hastati and Principes doing some damage. Triarii still holding, breaking the enemy units, pushing back against the enemy, fragmenting them. Glorious, glorious. The Carthaginians are now down to 21%. Ooh, we did another 46 casualties on them. I was about to say, this is looking pretty good if you ask me. We've got a 5% advantage over them. Almost broke another unit. Engaging in combat with the second one. Come on, come on. Didn't break them. Whatever, no big deal. Let's see. Those Velites, the Hastati. Can't really do much with them, so I guess I'm going to try to push them on to the back left. Yeah, I guess that looks like I pretty much done all my turns for this turn. So it's up to what our enemy does next. Depending on what they do can really decide the fate of the battle. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, we're taking heavy casualties that time. But plenty of enemy troops are retreating off the battlefield, so that's good. As their skirmishers try to move into position. I think that's one of the failings of our opponent as well. They didn't effectively use their skirmishers in the fight. Now, that may not necessarily have been their fault, or maybe my positioning kind of helped out a lot. But I guess that's something I like to do as well. I like to be very aggressive in these types of fights, especially knowing that you can lock out skirmishers from combat altogether. That means, to me, you almost want to stay in melee combat to keep skirmishers out of it. Try to use cav to harass them where you can, run them down. Holy crap, those Triarii are getting absolutely demolished. Ugh, that is so depressing to watch. My poor little Triarii doing what they can, where they can, how they can. But more Carthaginian troops have broken. I think this is dictating where the battle's going. It looks like we got this, boys. I was about to say, they're down to... Oh, there goes. Another unit auto breaks. Oh, another unit's disrupted. We charge from the rear. The enemy spearmen and inflict more casualties. Glorious! While more Spanish Scutari come pushing into the rear, disrupting the enemy formation, fragmenting them even. Yes... It's only a matter of time. Now the enemy general's completely surrounded. What turned out to be a massive push for them is now going to hurt a lot, as they are absolutely pelted by missile units from all sides. Ooh. Oh, man. That's depressing. They've lost about 100 men or so just from engaging, like from my freaking archers and stuff. There we go. Broke 2 more units. 45% of the Carthaginian army is now running for their lives. Glorious. Yeah, I think this battle's over at this point. Lots of rear flanking going on. That's pretty much what's winning us. This was outmaneuvering them. So I guess that goes to say as well, you know, a big thing you need to try to look for when you can is try to break an opening. Push a hole in the enemy formations. If you can do that, it's pretty much game over. Am I right? You just got to be careful about how you do it. Because if you overextend, I mean, your gain or your push through there could just expose you as easily as the enemy is exposed. So, for example, the enemy general pushing through the middle has only left him completely surrounded by Roman troops, which, frankly, means he's going to die. Not much he can do about that. Oh, we disrupted another enemy unit. Pushing in. Triarii, you're going to do some damage. Boom. 21. Literally almost, a little over a 3 KDR for that one. But these Triarii on the far right have lost half their men, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm not even going to engage. I don't want to lose any more of those Triarii. They're already getting absolutely stomped. Oh, there they go. Yeah, I'm not surprised when they've literally lost 140 men because of my terrible judgment error. I don't surprise. You just get out of there, boys. Run. But I guess holding off that cavalry did kind of have its own benefits in itself. I can imagine them pushing in on our right side could have hurt a lot more. But then again, what do I know? I am no strategist. As the enemy skirmisher cav tries to push in. But thankfully, they push us into a forest, and that does them no benefits at all. Enemy formations are still holding. Wait, will that one break? No, it won't. It held firm. It stood firm. And we just took some more casualties on the far right side there. I was about to say, this battle's got to almost be over. Like, I got, what, 40 seconds left? Did I just end it? I must have. I was about to say, because, like, this does not look like the battle's over yet. Breaks. There we go. There's 56. Any more units going to break? There we go. The enemy's lost heart. We're victorious. Glorious victory, my brothers. We stood firm and won as Romans do. And with that, you can basically see where we were outnumbered and we completely thrashed our opponents. Glorious victory. And with that, this has been Commissar Bro. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed narrating over it. It was a long one for sure, but you basically got to see an entire battle from Field of Glory 2. So I do recommend this game if you are wondering what my opinion on it is. It's definitely a very specific war game, so maybe if you're not so much of a war game fan, it might not be for you. But it is on sale right now, if I'm not mistaken, as per the Steam Winter Sale. Oh, no, it's not. I lied to you. I lied straight to your face. I'm filthy. But it's only $29.99 anyway. So as far as war games go, that's a good price. And there's a lot of quality here. There's a lot of well-done features. And as far as it goes, I recommend it. But anyway, this has been CB, and I'll see you next time.